Hey there! Hello and welcome back to Building Microservices with Go. And in this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to continue with this refactoring theme. We're kind of just getting through that, I suppose, trudging chore of getting our code up to something that's respectable. And refactoring, as we mentioned in the last episode, is quite a normal part of software development. You kind of can't predict everything to be perfect every time. So it's fine to go back and do a little refactoring. So that's what we're doing. Any folks are kind of dying for that next installment on gRPC, it will be coming very, very soon. I just want to tidy all of this up. And rather than doing it off stream, I thought I'll do it on camera and folks can kind of see what's going on. And you know what? Feel free to absolutely skip these videos. But anyway, let's get going. So last time what we started to do was we started to implement this get rate service. And this get rate service is going to fetch the exchange rates from the European Central Bank. And that central bank service returns XML. So we're parsing that and we're kind of creating our data structure. Now there's kind of one thing that we want to add to that because we're adding the exchange rates. Okay, so the differences between currencies. Now the European Central Bank, when it returns the rates, what it's actually doing is it's giving you a rate based on the euro. So for example, the value that you get for the US dollar is the number of US dollars to the euro. So in terms of the number of euros that you get for the euro, well, it's 1. Now we need to put that in there because of the way that we're going to kind of calculate the sort of the various different rates themselves as a ratio. And let's go do that first. So here, this is where we're kind of parsing all of that information. We're getting it all from there. We're getting all of the rates. So just before we return there, we are going to set the euros as a rate. So it's going to be e.rates, and rates takes a string. So we're going to set euro, and the value is going to be 1. So that's just nice and simple. So that's just so that we're adding euro as a rate into our exchange rate currency. So what's next? Well, we want to be able to get those rates. So as a kind of, when you're returning that, you know, I want to be able to query this service to get a rate. So let's just add a function. So function is going to be, call it E, exchange rates, and get rate. And what get rate is going to do is it's going to return you a ratio between two currencies. So we're going to be able to define the base currency, and that's going to be a string, and also the destination currency. And that's going to be a string. So this is going to return us a float and potentially an error. Okay, like that. Now, why am I setting this up? So I'm setting this up like this because what I potentially want to do is I want to call this and I want to say, hey, I want to get rate. I want the base rate to be the euro. And I want the destination bay rate to be, let's say, US dollars. And in those instances, that's fine. That will give me, for example, when I find the right thing, a value of 1.0824. But what if I want to get the rate of, let's say, I don't know, the US dollar to, if my base price is US dollars and I want to get the value of British pounds, then what I can do there is I can just divide the kind of the destination rate by the base rate. So that will just give me my ratio between those two things. All right, nice and easy. So that's all we're going to do in this function. So first things first, I just need to check the rates for both currencies because you may be passing in a string which doesn't exist. So let's just do that, and we can do, because it's a map, we can get the base rate. We're going to say okay, e.rates, because that's our map, a string, because map, our string, if you look here at our rates, it's a map. And that's going to return us the value as a float 64 and OK. Now, OK will either be true or false. If it'll be true if this map contains a value with the key of base. So if we're not OK, so if the rate doesn't exist, then what we're going to do is we're just going to return 0, and we're going to say format.errorf rate not found for currency base, like that. And that's going to give us our base rate. Now, we need to do the same thing for the destination. So we're going to call this dr, and I'm going to say if e.rates.dest, blah, 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 rate not found for currency and dest. So this is a really, really simple function. Now, then I'm just going to do a return dr over br and no error. So what that's going to do is that's going to return me a float 64. So as we kind of said earlier on, if the base rate is the euro, which all of these currencies are in, that's why we added that entry down here to the map of 1, because then our ratio is going to be, say, 1.08, which is the current rate for the dollar to the euro, over the euro, which is 1, and that's going to give you 108. So that'll give us a nice, consistent way of getting that ratio. And that's done. So what we can now do is we can look at the service that actually implements this. And I will put a link in that thing up there in case you've not seen this, but we started putting this unary endpoint together for gRPC. So unary endpoint's kind of a single one way, it's kind of two ways, but request response standard approach for gRPC. And we called it getRate, and getRate returns a rate response, which just gives us a rate as float 32, and we didn't put anything in there. We had no implementation, and that was just to kind of get this thing going. So what we're going to do now is we're going to implement our new service. So inside of new service, we have our logger. What we also want to get in here is our rates, our data rates, rate service thing, the thing that has all of our rates. I'm going to call it R. So it's rates dot, and we call it exchange rates. Like that. And we're going to have a reference. So I'm going to store that reference here as well. And rates dot exchange rates. And we are pretty much good on that. Getting the request and the logger. Oh, package data. Got the wrong package. I only created it myself 2 seconds ago as well. Never mind. So data. And thank you for that, for putting the cursor right where the mouse should have been. Okay. So that's just setting up our currency. So now, rather than returning this non-existent rate here, what we're going to do is we're going to return get our proper rate. So what we're going to do first. So what we will do is we will call rates.getRate, and then we've got the base currency and the destination currency. So we can get that from the protocol rate request. So what we can say here is we can get this, let's just take a look. Okay, so rr dot, and then we've got base, and we can get base as a string. Now we're going to use get base dot string, okay? And that is going to return us the value that we need. Now, we need to do the same thing for the destination as well. So we're going to get the base currency and we're going to get the destination currency. So all of this is pretty, pretty easy. Now, let's do that. Sorry. dot get base. Oops. Get destination dot string. Okay. So this returns us a float 64 and an error. So it's going to give us the actual rate and potentially an error if one of these doesn't exist. So we can just quickly do this. All right. So we're just going to say if error is not equal to nil, then return nil and error. Just get rid of that for the time being. So now we've got our rate. It's a float 64, and we've got our rate response here, which is actually defined as a float 32. So let's just quickly go through and refactor this and change that. So if you remember when we were defining the kind of the protocol buffers, then you kind of define this protos file. Oh, sorry, that's the product. In this proto file, this is where you're defining your interface. So we have float here as a rate response. So if we look at the documentation for Proto 3, and we can look at the base types, somewhere in here it will be. There we go. You can see that we have float, and float is type float 32, the Go type float 32. We want float 64, so that's going to be the prototype of double. Let's just change that. Okay, so we've changed that now. So what we need to do though is we need to update this file here, which is code generated. So I can just run my make file, which is going to just call my proto-c command. And again, all of that stuff was in the first video on gRPC, so I'll put that link just there for anybody who hasn't seen that. But now, if we look at rate and rate response, it's now float 64, same as this value here. So I can just return rate. Okay. So that's kind of a little bit of a refactoring done there on my rate service. All we need to do now is create the instance of our rates and pass it into this, and that goes into the main.go. So I'm going to create it up here, rates, data.new. Wow, I can't remember what my memory. I must be getting old. Data.exchange rates. I'm definitely getting old, aren't I? I can't even remember what the method is. New rates. My word. New rates. What does new rates takes? Well, it takes a logger. So we can save that. All right. So new rates logger. That also gives us an error because if it can't create the rates, for example, if it doesn't hit the ECB, then we want to bounce that too. So if error is not equal to nil, then log dot error, something like that. And then we're just going to quit os.exit 1. Okay. So now in our new currency, we can now pass in the rates. Okay. So that's all good. So we can just run this and go run. Whoops. Main.go. And all of that is up and running. So we're all good there. So what is next? So the next thing we want to do now we've refactored our currency service is we kind of want to go back and do a little bit of refactoring in the product API. And let me kind of show you a few areas where I think we need to clean this up. So the kind of the first thing is when we started to implement this, and if you look back to when we created this product API and implemented first the sort of the currency service, we started to put this stuff in here. So it was kind of getting inlined into here. So the product calls were kind of going there, and that was a little bit strange because what we were doing is we have this data object which actually gives us our products, which includes the price, but we're kind of mutating the price inside of our get handler. And I think the better place for that logic is actually inside the data class. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove all of these calls to the currency service, and we're going to put them into the data class. And let's have a look at how we're going to do that. So let's go over to that data class. So we have products.go. Oh, there we go. So products.go, when it was originally created, was really, 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 really simple. And it was just a bunch of functions. And that was kind of fine for a little while. But again, I think we sort of start to need to think about this now and start to, in some ways mature it. Because some of the things that I want to be able to do now is I want to be able to pass in an object, which is going to be my rates currency service. And I can't really do that if I don't have a constructor, because the object is just going to be kind of like dangling. And you can kind of look at some of the techniques and go, and you can use things like inits. It's not really a good thing to do. It's not a good practice. What I want to be able to do is I want to be able to kind of follow that constructor injection type approach, because when I get into testing, it's going to make my life really, really, really so much easier. So let's do that. Let's refactor all of this stuff into a type. And well, what am I going to call it? That's a pretty great question. Let's products DB, I suppose. So let's call it products DB. And it's a struct with an R. Not getting caught out with that one on this one. And we're going to have a number of different objects on this. So some of the things that we're going to have on here, we're going to have, well, we need our currency service, which we're going to get from our proto. So it's going to be currency. And I'm going to call this, protos dot currency client. Is it going to do the import correctly for me? Of course it's not. Let's go over here and do that. All right, there we go. So we've got our currency client, which has get rate, and that's going to be able to get the exchange rates from our currency service. And we are going to need, what else? Well, I think we can just get a logger for time being. So let's add that on there. So log, HC log, logger. So I'm going to go through, and I'm also going to replace out that sort of using the format.println line. I'm going to start using a structured logger. It's much, much better. The use of being able to have a structured logger is incredibly beneficial when it comes to sort of writing your code. A structured logger will give you data in a uniform format. It's going to make your life much, much easier. You're going to be able to do things like output in JSON, which is great if you want to ingest your logs into something like Loki from the Grafana folks, or you want to put it into Elasticache or pretty much any sort of anything really. It just makes it more parsable. So we're going to do that. And we're going to create a function, and it's going to be new products DB. So the types I'm going to pass in there is going to be protos.currency client. Currency client is an interface, which is why I'm not passing it by reference there. And also we want our logger, hclog.logger. And again, logger is an interface. And I'm going to return an instance of products DB there. So quite simply, this is pretty straightforward. I am just going to return a reference products DB with C and L. There's nothing much clever going on there. So now what I want to do is I want to kind of go through this and I want to kind of modify all of these calls like get products, and I want to modify those and make them methods now. So let's take this one first. So get product. So I'm just converting the standard function into a method by adding the objects on there. So it's going to be P and that is products DB. This it doesn't return anything kind of differently there, but what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to kind of query the product. So if we go back over to our, where is it? There we go. Our get service, then what we defined is the ability to kind of, where is it? Where is it? We're getting the rate from the, looking at the right file. I'm sure I am. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, there we go. Sorry. So we're getting the, oh, we're not doing that at all. That's interesting. All right. We're going to refactor that in a moment. What we're going to do is we're going to refactor this so that we can now have an optional parameter, which is going to be the exchange rate. So I'll be able to query my product in a number of different prices. At the moment, we're hard coding that to euros and British pounds. So let's do that. All right. So what I want to do in terms of get products is I want to be able to specify a destination currency. So we're always going to have our base currency of euros. So we're going to do currency string. So now what we can do is we can just say, well, if the currency is blank, because sometimes you just want things in the base currency of euro, then I'm just going to return the product list because it doesn't matter. I don't need to change anything. Oops, right, let me just add. There we go. But if it isn't blank, then what I need to do is I need to be able to get the currency rate. And I'm going to get that from the service. So let's have a look at how I can do this. So what I do is I'm going to call p dot, and it is, come on, where are you? Currency dot get rate. And get rate is going to have, if you remember, exactly this signature here. So we define a rate request, context.background. So we can literally just copy that code. And I'm going to get rid of that in a moment. And protos.rate request, currency, get rate. Save that up. Okay. And let's have a look here. So if we're not getting the new rate, we want to return something. And what do we want to return? Well, we should return an error. So let's refactor that. So we're going to return nil, blank collection, and we're going to return the error there. So this was kind of the previous way that we were looking at it when we were building this out, and we weren't using this structured logger. So I was having to kind of put these error things in and stuff there to be able to parse that out. It's just, I mean, it works if I want to use the standard package, but it's just not very flexible. So when I'm using my new logger, and I can just do error, and that's going to automatically sort of sort things out. And it just means I can write something, so I can say unable to get rate. And we're going to say for currency. And we're going to pass the error. And not like that, we're not going to do it properly. Okay. So then we've now got our rate there. And rate isn't currently being used. So what we need to do is we need to manipulate all of the prices in our product list and return the correct rate. So what's it going to be? We're going to do well 4, and it's going to be P in range product list. And that's going to allow us to iterate over those products. And we're going to create ourselves a new product list. So it's going to be, well, I can't remember what to call it. I think I'll just call it PR. Have I got a PR? PR, which is product return or something along those lines. And that is going to be product, like that. So then what we're going to do is we're going to iterate over all of that stuff. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to append from our original product. So we're going to do PR equals gosh, my brain. We're going to do PR equals P. And that is going to give us a reference there. So let's think about that. So what that is actually going to give us is that's going to return the reference. So if we mutate the value of that reference, then that's not what we want, because it's going to underline, it's going to change everything on the kind of the underlying setup there. So what we need to do is create a copy of it. So I'm going to call it NP, which is a new product. And then I can use the D reference like that, and I can copy, so I can copy P. So NP now is a copy of P. So what I can now do is I can do NP dot price, and I can manipulate the price. So I'm going to say NP dot price equals NP dot price times my resp.rate. So that's going to give me my rate. And it's kind of complaining there because I'm saying I've got a float 32 and a float 64. So let me just update the data type there and change that to a float 64, not float 65. All right. So now we've got our product. Oops. And then what we can do is we can append it. So we're going to do append PR NP. And we need to take a reference to that. So that now we're just adding to that. We've copied that collection. We're just kind of adding it. We're manipulating it. And then we're going to return nil. Okay. So this is kind of slowly getting there. We've refactored out this method now. We've refactored out get products. It's getting a little bit cleaner. So the next thing we need to do is we need to kind of go through and we need to refactor out all of these other elements as well. So let's quickly go through and do that. So get products by ID. This is going to get a singular product. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do P products, DB, get product by ID, and then we're going to get the product, we're going to return it, and blah, blah, blah. But again, we need to get the rate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a helper function, because this code here is going to end up duplicated. So what I want is a little helper function for fetching the rate. The other thing is, well, that's still hard coded, so just as well I spotted that. So I like to put helper functions, things like that, down at the kind of the bottom of my class. Of my object. It doesn't really matter. I think the kind of the general rule of thumb is you want to try and keep them as close to the methods where they're being used as you can. But I like all my public stuff to kind of be, you know, up the top. It's where the sort of the entry point for the interface is probably where I'm going to start whenever I'm having any issues. So I'm going to add that function here, and I need to make it a method, because I need a reference to my currency service. So it's going to be, can't remember what I called it again. Wow, memory. Product DB, P, products DB, and this is get rate. It's a string for the destination rate, and it returns a float 64 and an error. All right, nice and easy. So then what we can do is we are just going to copy all of this stuff here. And I'm just going to paste that into there. So blah, 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 if blah, when we're going to do, if there's an error, we know what, actually, we can just return straight away resp dot rate, which is a float 64 and an error, because if that error is blank, it doesn't matter. If it isn't, well, we want to do about it. We are always going to be using euro as our base rate, so I can just specify the destination there. So let's go back up here to our service. Where were we? All right, here. So we're going to do get rates. We're going to do p dot get rate and currency rate error, and then we can refactor that. Okay, nice and easy. Right, so back down to here. So again, if we don't find the product, we're just going to return error product not found. Then what we want to do is get the rate. So we're going to just manipulate this signature here, because we want the ID and we want the currency that we want to fetch back. So then we can say that, well, if currency equals, if it's blank, then just return nil and the object that we returned there. Wrong way around. Sorry, my bad. Okay. And then what I want to do, what's it complaining about? Okay. Oh, because I is the product ID. So, all right. Let's just grabs me the index. Okay. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the rate, and I'm going to fetch that rate. And what I want to do is, again, I need to take a copy. And the reason that I need to take a copy is because product list has a references. Now, if I grab product list and mutate the rate on it, I'm going to be mutating the actual collection item. I don't want to do that. I want to return a specific. So why I'm using that star. Okay, so my new product equals star product list. Oops. And thank you for auto-completing that I don't want it auto-complete. So what's going on in this line? NP is defining a new variable. And I'm automatically assigning it product list of index I. So that's going to return me a product object with the given index. Now product is a reference. So by using the star here, sorry, my bad. By using the star here, what I'm doing is dereferencing it. So I'm in effect, I'm taking a copy of this very simple struct, and I can do that. I can get away with it because it's not a deep object. It's just very, very flat. So I'm doing that. But then what I'm going to do is I can safely manipulate the price. So NP, oops, price equals rate, and then return NP. So there's a couple of little updates there. We've updated and we've refactored get products to be able to now have this optional currency, and we've refactored the get product by ID to do the same thing. So update product, well, when we don't update it based on a currency. I mean, potentially we could take, but we're gonna make an assumption that all of our updates are already in the base currency of euros. So I can just change this into a product, a method, and I'm going to do the same there. So middleware in gRPC, and there's some interesting questions about where we can kind of use middleware in gRPC, because we looked at middleware in the REST when we were looking at RESTful services, and absolutely we're going to be looking at that in probably just a couple of videos time. We're going to look at in the kind of the next video, once we get away from the refactoring, we're going to be looking at things like actually implementing bidirectional streams, and I think that's really interesting. And then once we get past bidirectional streams, we're going to look at error handling with gRPC, and then from error handling, I'll look at middleware, because I think middleware, it functions very, very similar to how we kind of implemented an HTTP, but obviously has different properties and methods and things like that. So we'll look at that, because middleware is incredibly useful for well, doing most things. Okay, so let me, if I spell this correctly and stop talking, product, gosh, product, come on brain. It is quite late in the UK. And exactly the same thing on delete products. So P products, DB, delete products, and find index I product. That can stay as it is. And product list and everything there. We are pretty good. Okay. So that's that refactored. We now have our new products DB, which is of a smarter type. So what's next? Well, what's next is we need to start refactoring when we're using this product DB. So let's dig into here. So this is our get handler for our HTTP handler. And this has a couple of different methods. Again, I'll put a link to the video up there. Is that right? For when we built out this RESTful API. But we're just going to kind of make some simple changes to this. So the first thing is that we notice is that, well, get product by ID is no longer a function on the data package. It's actually an object now. So we need to refactor that. So the first thing that we are going to refactor is in our main sort of handler function. So in new product, we pass in the logger, and we're using the old-fashioned logger, and we'll refactor that as well. The data validation and the Proto's currency client. So we need to change the signature on this. And the reason we need to change the signature on this is that we don't need this currency client anymore because the functionality that's handled in there is in our product DB. So product DB, and that is going to be data.productsDB, and that's a reference. The logger that I'm using, I'm not using the logger from the standard package anymore because I want to be able to refactor away all of that kind of manual stuff. So I'm going to use the same thing. I'm going to use hclog. There's a number of different structured loggers out there, and please feel free to sort of choose whichever one you prefer. I'm ever so slightly biased by using hclog. It does the job for me, and I think it's a nice and simple logger. So it doesn't have too much complexity. It's nice and lightweight, and the interfaces and the sort of the separation is really, really sensible. So I like it, and I'm going to continue using it. So again, refactoring hclog.logger. It's no longer a reference because logger is interface. That can stay the same. And then we're going to change our products DB, which is data.productDB. And when we come to testing, we will kind of see that we're going to kind of change the way that a lot of this stuff works, because we're introducing concrete types here with both validation and with products DB. We don't want to be doing that when we start getting into testing scenarios, because we don't want to be running through the actual classes here. We're not testing the code inside of validation or product DB. We're testing our logic inside of this handler. So we'll replace those with interfaces, and we'll see how that's possible at a later date. But for now, let me just change those. Oops, and that there is an interface. Okay. So now I think everything looks good there. We can now refactor the get handler. So we're going to have to go through and we're going to have to do a reasonable bit of refactoring here. But so we're doing obviously the logger.print line, and we've got that debug statement. But we're going to change that because hclog automatically adds that stuff for me. So I can just change that much simpler, get all products. And then again, so data.getProducts, getProducts is no longer there. GetProducts is now on productsDB, and I need the currency. So let me just put that in there for a moment, and we'll kind of come back to this once we've gone through and refactored out all of this and made it compiling again. And that, of course, returns an error as well. Whoops. So let me just quickly factor in there. And we're going to say, if the error is not nil, then what we want to do is we want to return the internal status error, something like that. And we're making this is a RESTful service. So we're returning JSON objects with our error message. We've got this generic error object type. So that there, and then that's going to be return. Okay. Oh gosh, all the things. All right. So next, what we're doing, then what we're going to do is we are converting our products, which we return back, into a JSON data structure, and we're checking error. If we get an error, then yeah, we want to log it. So we can again change the type on that. the error message. Serialize the products. HC log allows me to have these kind of additional fields, which is why I'm kind of setting this out like this. And yeah, so we should never be there because this data structure should always, but you never know. There might be a reason why we can't do that. All right, next thing down. All we should really have to do is kind of, for most of this stuff, is just going to be kind of refactoring out that logger. And I do apologize. It is incredibly tedious stuff. But, well, not all programming is exciting. And sometimes you've just got to kind of get through all of this. And as I said, I'm kind of putting this in because I didn't want to do just a kind of a big refactor off stream. And then when you start to come back to it and you're like, hey, why is all this code changed? Well, now there's a reference. The code has changed because it wasn't really up to scratch and it was time to do a bit of a tidy up. So anyway, here we are. And we're going to get there. Unable to fetch product. Hey, it's like watching paint dry. It also takes a little bit longer to do this stuff when you're trying to do it live. So the thing, all of this code here where we're getting the exchange rate, all of that can go, and as can all of that, because the product here now has the exchange rate correctly computed. So that's cleaning up our code a little bit. It's, you know, we're back onto kind of single responsibility. The single responsibility of the get handler is to retrieve data, format it to JSON, and print it back to the user. And thank you for that calendar reminder. And there we go. So unable. Okay, so that's the get handler done. We're going to have to just quickly go through and replace all of these logging statements here. This is completely my fault because I let this logger go on for too long. And in fact, I probably should never have used this logger in the first place because in production, I would never use it. My rationale was that I was trying to make it easy for you. And I made it easy for you. Now I've got to bore you to death by watching you watching me refactor all of this garbage away. Well, there's a lesson learned. But it won't take that long. Oh, of course, delete product no longer is on there. It is now on product DB. All of this is good. It's absolutely worth spending the time getting good logging inside of your applications and systems, because especially when you start to deal with distributed systems, it can be really, really difficult to kind of understand what's going on. Being able to have traceability in terms of being able to look at logs when you can't actually directly inspect the inside of an application is really, really cool. To be fair, there's been a lot of advances in remote debugging recently. It's absolutely possible now to attach a local debugger to an application running inside of a Kubernetes pod, for example, and we're going to look at that when I do finally get around to debugging. But regardless of whether you're going to debug your services by step debugging, which isn't actually always that easy in a live process, but you still want good logging, so it's worth spending the time. Don't be afraid to get it wrong and to change it. It's all just a progression. I think in a lot of cases, one of the approaches that that I like to take is I don't want to dwell too much on sort of overthinking design. I like to think about design and I like to test it, but I'm not afraid to go back and refactor. And I think that's a kind of a key thing. I've never been particularly a great sort of fan of sitting down for weeks and weeks on end and kind of just hacking away to create these beautiful design documents, because I think quite often you want something to evolve a little bit more naturally. I think things progress a lot faster that way, and I think you end up with a better overall solution. So don't not up front think about things, but don't spend too much time on it. Don't be afraid to write some code and make some changes later on. Gosh, I'll be glad to see the back of this one. Nearly there. Oh, I think we are there. Oh, finally. We've refactored out all of that. Okay, so let's quickly look at this. This will not compile, I'm pretty sure, because I need to make some change to the main, but we can test this out. Let's just go run and we can see where we're at. Go run main.go. Okay, so products.go 102. Products.go 10. Not in there, I don't think. Must be this one. 102. Okay. Should be times. Duplicate argument P104. Because we need to return the reference. 111. Oh, okay. Look at what we got there. Okay, that's fine. Call this PR. So in that instance, we had a argument as well as a class name. Sorry, structure name. Badnik, not class, not Java. And we're nearly getting there. So just the last little bit of refactoring on the middleware. And let's see if we can get this done before my wife returns and my dog starts barking. What are the odds? What do you think? Oops. All right. There we go. What do we got? Blah, blah, blah. Main.go 42. All right. So we're literally onto the last leg. So the thing that we're doing now is we are creating our new products, which is our database, and complaining about it, saying I can't can't use CC type currency.currency client as data product DB. Yeah, well, that's correct. So in our, where are we creating the product DB in here? Well, we're not, because we had products DB as functions before. So we were using package functions. So let's create the products DB. And that's going to be data.new products ID. We're going to pass it the currency client and our logger. Our logger here is not going to be the standard logger that we're using. We are going to use the hclog. So it's going to be hclog dot default logger, like that. And where's our products DB? Our handler is now going to take an instance of DB. And down here, okay, we're not using that anymore. So we're going to do log.info. This is going to be our log.error. Final leg. It's nearly there. Okay, and lastly, well, yeah, I was going to say I'd be amazed if that worked. The error log. So hclogger. So error log requires a log.standard logger. What we have now is an instance of hclog. hclog we can convert to standard logger. There is a function here, and we can specify the standard logger and the options. So I'm just going to do the default options because they are fine. Okay. And our application is running. This is the exciting bit. So let's go to product API. And I'm going to do curl localhost 9090. And we're going to do products. Let's just pipe that in JQ. Okay, so this is good. So we've kind of piped that into JQ. This is our baseline. Okay, these are our kind of raw prices. We're not doing any conversion on that at the moment. So how do we do the conversion? So what we need to do is we need to kind of do some modifications in order to be able to get the currency. So what is the currency going to look like? Well, the currency is going to look well, pretty straightforward. But what we want to do is we want to get that from the query string. So at the moment, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to do something like currency equals US dollars. So rather than my base currency, which is euros, I want to be able to return these prices in US dollars. So let's just take a look at where we're going to get that information from. So the thing that we can do is we can go to, where is the regex? Come here, regex. I've got a regex on my clipboard somewhere. I'm not going to be doing this this stuff manually. That would be crazy. There we go. All right. Let's scroll back. Oh, on the right window. So here we're getting the products. So we're handling the products, and this is going to get us our product, but with the ID. So what we can do is we can add a method onto here. And the method that we can add is also going to give us the capability of doing this with a query. So we have a base list all, but we can add a new endpoint, which also has a query. And the query string, again, I can use the Gorilla framework. The name of it is going to be currency. And it's going to conform to this regular expression. So the regular expression there is saying it's going to be in uppercase between A and Z and 3. So that is kind of how I'm using my currency codes there. If we look, we've got these 3-letter currency codes. So I can set that up like that. I can do exactly the same thing here for my product list. So the one with the ID, exactly the same thing, list single, but I'm just adding this query, which is giving this this additional parameter. So now when I kind of want to call over in my get function, what I can do is I can fetch that that currency. So let's have a look at how we would do that. So what we do is we kind of, where are we? There we go. We've got this get product ID. So get product ID, what that does is that returns us the kind of the product ID from the request. Right. Gosh, it's getting confusing. I'm confusing myself. But what I can also do is I can get the query string, and I'm just going to use pure Go to be able to do that. And I'm just going to use url.query get currency. Now, if currency doesn't exist, that's fine. But if currency does exist, because I've defined that root here, I know that it's going to be in the right format, which is great. So now when I call get product ID, I can pass the currency there. And when I call the list all, I can do exactly the same thing. Where am I? List all. There we go. Get the currency. Okay. So we're all good. So now let me just restart that service. And that's all looking good. Let's rerun. We did restart that, didn't we? Did. We're getting, oh, of course. Right. That is not my code. That is, come on, computer, give me a break. Just, all right. It's because we've got the dollar there and bash is being a pain in the bottom. All right. So here we go. So you can see now these differences. So a latte, the base price is 245 euros. When we specify that we want it in a currency of US dollars, the return price is 265. And the reason for that is because we've got 245 times 1.08, 2.45 times 1.08, and that equals 264, just to prove that I'm not doing smoke and mirrors. Well, there's obviously some decimal places there, but this is what we've done, and we've kind of done quite a bit of refactoring there. One very last thing that we need to do, and that is we need to update our documentation, because our documentation, our list now takes an additional method, because we've now got the ability to specify the query. So let's just add that in. So we've got our product response. Where should we put it? Do we not have a product? Oh, there we go. Product ID. So we're just going to put a product query parameter. So we're adding that so that when we generate our documentation, the Swagger will be correctly generated. And then inside of our get handler, we can update the documentation here. That returns a product response. Let me just double check in my docs. Okay, my query parameter, I'm using that Swagger. So I'm saying that list product and list single product now have this. So I've got that reference there. So when I generate my docs, make Swagger. And again, I'm just going to rerun that. Just as a kind of a side there, you can see that the currency service was called, which is cool. Localhost 1990 docs. So now inside of our docs, we should also be seeing that query string. Where is it? Seeing the query parameter there. Oh, there it is. My bad. Query parameter. So we can now got clearly there, we've got that query parameter. So it's showing that list products has an optional query parameter of currency. And that's it. We are done. I am going to quickly stop all of that. Go back a level. Git status. Wow, there's quite a bit of changes there. It's quite a this stream was about, well, an hour and it was about 37 minutes longer than I intended, but I'm glad we've got through it. Let me just add all of that. Git commit. Something like that. And I need to do a little bit of branch refactoring, but I'm just going to push it to that branch for now. So that you can see it. Of course, building microservices with YouTube. There's our new branch. There we go. Bouncing that over there for you. And we're done. So we've gone through and we've done quite a big bit of a refactoring there. And I think it was necessary. What we've ended up with is some code which is in a lot better shape. It's going to allow us to easily start to implement this bidirectional stream. And this is going to be the thing that we're looking at next. And I'm excited about this because what I'm going to show you is how you can use gRPC bidirectional streaming to create a two-way stream between two services. So what we're going to set up is we're going to set up a way of having that currency service automatically update our product API service whenever a new rate change happens. And that's going to be kind of cool. Like, is there a real problem in posing it? Nah, not too bad, but you know, it's going to be good. I think it's going to be really interesting. After that, we're going to look at error handling. And then after that, we're going to look at middleware. And that's going to complete everything that we were looking at for gRPC. So by next week, I think we're going to be in a position where we can start looking at something which I'm really very passionate about, which is microservice testing. So until then, I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you all for persevering with this stream because, my God, it was a bit of a drawn out one. But until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe, share with your friends. Oh, and also, we've got an episode of HashiCraft coming on Handicraft. Well, yeah, I'll stick the link below, but HashiCraft on YouTube, Google. Wow. Yes. There we go.
Hey, Nick. What are you up to?
Hey. Oh, gosh. That caught me. Well, you know. So we got an episode of HashiCraft coming on Friday. This Friday, we're going to be looking at how you can schedule Java applications using Nomad. So don't forget to like and subscribe there and tune in on that one because it's going to be complementary to Building Service and YouTube, but this channel is concentrating more around DevOps. And again, thank you. And until next time, I will bid you farewell. And thank you all for watching there on the chat. I will be absolutely looking at authentication and authorization, where we're going to be covering that in a little while. There's quite a bit to get through before we start looking at that sort of stuff. We need to look at testing and things like that as well, because if you're going to kind of dig into things like authentication and authorization without having a good grounding and a good foundation, it's going to leave you into quite a bit of trouble. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope you're enjoying the stream. I think I apologize. Some of it can be a little bit dry, but we'll get there. It's all necessary evil. I want to, as I said, I think these last couple of videos have been really important because I don't want to just refactor this off stream. I tend to do that, and I do it because I look at some of the things that I've written on stream and I'm like, that wasn't ideal for that point in time. And I think going through putting these couple of videos in, as I said, completely optional. You can kind of skip through this stuff, but it's a good historical reference when people go from looking at episode 14, when we're sort of looking really into just sort of pure gRPC and implementing the client and things like that, and then getting to what will be now episode 17 with bidirectional streaming. It'll look a world of different. So on that, I will bid you all good night, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Probably, I think I'll probably try and do Thursday. I think I'll probably try and get a stream in on Thursday, because I'm keen to try and wrap up gRPC this week so I can dig into testing. All right. Have a good evening.